Greetings to all. My name is Zinzipho Shakakain. I hope and trust that everyone is doing well. So today I'll be presenting on Chapter 12, South Africa's Key Urban Transport Challenges by Tracy McKay. Different cities of South Africa face a number of different transport issues. The number of cars and trucks increases annually and often exceeds road carrying capacity. Cape Town and Johannesburg suffer most excessive recurrent and non-recurrent traffic congestion, and these are some of the characteristics of major urban areas. Congestion prevents economic growth and reduces quality of life. The associated exhaust emissions from vehicles are also a major source of South Africa's greenhouse gas production and contribute to poor local air quality. Transport poverty is another characteristic of the South African city. It affects poor urban residents adversely. So these are people that are living on the urban periphery. Transport poverty prevents residents' ability to look for work, access community and social services, and limits participation in urban life. Some people even lose their jobs or resign due to severe transport difficulties. Another form of transport poverty is when people pay more in travel costs than what they can reasonably afford. For South Africans, it is estimated that urban residents spend over 20% of their disposable income on transport. Those who can access transport often travel long distances to their destination. These long commutes are not only bad for the environment, but they also reduce an individual's quality of life. A case study on transport poverty was done in Orange Farm, a residential area that lies on the periphery of the city of Johannesburg. Despite the lived experiences of poor urban residents, little policy attention has been paid to transport poverty in South Africa. Lawton in 2014, using 2011 GCRO survey data, found that 37% of the residents made no trips at all. Of the 63% that did travel, 45% of them spent between 60 and 150 minutes a day doing so. Traveling was expensive for these residents, with some spending up to 1,500 Rand a month on transport, which is half of their salary. It is estimated that more than half of urban road infrastructure is in a poor state of repair. This situation is far worse in the smaller, more impoverished urban areas compared to the metropolitan cities. South Africa's urban roads are characterized by potholes, cracks, bleeding, and scrambling edges. Such conditions result in motorized vehicles being fuel inefficient and contribute towards many road accidents. The roads are in a poor condition partly because South Africa experiences high-intensity rainfall events, but also because of a poor water drainage system. Another reason for poor conditions on the roads is poor road management, such as roads not being scheduled for maintenance on a regular basis, along with poorly executed repair work and a shortage of road engineers. South Africa's roads are not engineered for the number of vehicles currently using it. Currently, truck transportation dominates freight transportation in South Africa. Poor enforcement of the Road Traffic Act number 93 of 1996 and the associated road traffic regulations have resulted in truck mass not being policed, and there has consequently been excessive growth in the number, size, and weight of heavy trucks on the road. The result is a massive road damage and traffic congestion. These trucks are also a danger to other road users. Another unusual characteristic of the South African city is a costly and long school commuting pattern. The school commute accounts for between 22% and 29% of all daily trips. Although some of the commute can be attributed to a desire to access quality education, the nature of the sprawling urban landscape makes the problem structural as well. Many poor children walk long and dangerous distance paths between 3 and 6 kilometers a day to school and back. But most children commute to school either by private car or minibus taxi, or make use of dedicated school transport vehicles. And as a result, the school commute has spawned an entire school transport industry. On the other hand, bicycles can be used as an alternative to commute to schools by children, but fear of theft, traffic, and poor quality cycle tracks are the main reasons of low levels of use. One of the root causes of this urban transport crisis is that South Africa's cities and towns have been profoundly impacted by historic policies of racial segregation and spatial apartheid, such as the implementation of the Natives Act of 1923 and the Group Areas Act of 1950. South African cities now face an atypical urban sprawl problem. Another root cause is weak urban land use planning. We see single land use planning and single-story dwellings dominate the South African urban landscape. South Africa has a high rate of private car ownership, with 165 in every 1,000 South Africans owning cars. This means that South Africans are vulnerable to fuel price increases as they directly impact on the cost of transport. Providing all South Africans with affordable spaces and reliable, safe and affordable transport is not going to be possible unless issues like rapid urbanization, power segregationist urban planning decisions, and suburbanization are addressed head on. A death of active commuting. Due to historical legacies and more recent urban sprawl, the distances between work, home, and/or services are far too great for people to realistically undertake an active commute, which is walking. Secondly, there is a desperate shortage of active commuting infrastructure. For example, sufficient user-friendly and adequately maintained sidewalks, pedestrian crossing, dedicated bicycle lanes, footbridges, etc. The infrastructure that is there is shared with informal traders. Workplaces seldom support active commuting. For example, there are no bike racks, showers, or changing rooms for staff to freshen up after cycling or long walk. Thirdly, active commuters are also faced with danger from vehicular traffic. Currently, around 5,600 pedestrians die on South Africa's roads annually, which is double the world average. Approximately 300 cyclists die each year on South Africa's roads. Fourthly, the possibilities of being a victim of crime and violence makes many avoid active commuting. Lastly, pedestrians and cyclists are not recognized as legitimate users of public roads and sidewalks with legal rights. Unless pedestrian-friendly policies are adopted, active commuting will not be an option for most urban residents. In Gauteng, only 3% of all trips taken are by bus and 5% by train. Many urban areas have no bus services to speak of at all. Except for the Gautrain, no new railway lines have been laid and no new train stations built. The average age of the coaches is 31 years and 39% of the fleet is between 30 and 45 years old, which is exceeding safety limits regarding maintenance and operations. Furthermore, many critical signaling systems need to be replaced. Although the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa has recently invested in new trains, it appears that much of this investment was diverted to tender fraud. Overall, the urban rail network is run down, unsafe, and old. Railway stations are massively underserviced in terms of public toilets and retail services. In addition, trains are often late, vandalized, involved in accidents, or vulnerable to incidents of criminality. Access to stations, the punctuality of the trains, and security remain the main concern of most users. The commuter rail system transports over 2 million passengers daily. Of that, 84% of commuters are low-income black males. Historically, urban rail transport was supplemented by various bus services, some of which were state-owned and operated, but most were privately run. The urban bus passenger transport industry is a quasi-monopoly, which means that it is highly regulated with multiple costly and hard-to-obtain permits, making it very difficult for newcomers to enter the industry. With little competition and guaranteed subsidies, bus tickets are relatively cheap, but the service remains poor. As a result, buses are often overcrowded, unreliable, crime-ridden, frequently not roadworthy, uncomfortable, filthy, and have broken seats and windows. To add to that, passengers usually have a long walk to bus stops. The rise of the minibus taxi. South Africa's transport revolution was brought about by a loophole in the Road Transportation Act number 74 of 1977, which allowed privately owned vehicles and taxis to carry up to 8 paying passengers. By the late 1980s, some 30% of Black African commuters abandoned buses and trains. Black African owners were able to upgrade their vehicles to the now common minibus taxi, which carries 9 to 15 passengers. Most owners had to operate illegally as permits were difficult to obtain. Minibus taxis are more expensive than the other modes of transport as they are not directly subsidized by the state. There are also numerous incidents of violence as operators clash over routes, taxi rank space, and control of the industry. More importantly, most vehicles are not roadworthy. In 2004, the state approved a multi-billion rand recapitalization policy whose aim was to improve the quality of the taxi transport in South Africa by institutionalizing the industry. Number 2, changing the licensing system. Number 3, regulating the industry. And lastly, replacing old vehicles with new ones. So this project was not a success because the state did not necessarily communicate with the private owners of the vehicles. Minibus taxis are more reliable, more comfortable, cover more routes, and are quicker than buses or trains. It is estimated that between 50 to 60% of all urban transport trips are made using these minibus taxis. New projects addressing some of the train and bus transport problems, the Gautrain Rapid Link. So the Gautrain is a rapid link between the cities of Johannesburg and Pretoria in Gauteng. It also connects the two cities to our Tambo International Airport, and it has 10 stations, namely Hatfield, Pretoria Centurion, Rhodes-Field, OR Tambo, Marlborough, Sandton, Rosebank, and Park Station in Johannesburg. This project was conceived as an economic development initiative and not a transport one. It was primarily put together to grow Gauteng's economy, create jobs, foster Black economic empowerment, and promote tourism. The Gautrain Rapid Link also hoped that the various stations would rejuvenate the CBDs of Johannesburg and Pretoria. Gautrain has managed to reduce traffic congestion a little, but the location of the stations has not solved transport poverty in the province. This mode of transportation is seen as expensive by commuters and frustrating at times. Despite all the revenue the project generates from, example, the ticket sales, it is still running at a loss, and it is heavily subsidized by the Gauteng provincial government. The second project was the Bus Rapid Transit, BRT. The purpose of this system is to boost public transport. The initiative hopes to reduce traffic congestion and get people to stop using private cars. Various BRTs have been introduced in Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Cape Town. So in Johannesburg, they have Rea Vaya, and in Tshwane, we have REA. The BRT has dedicated busways, bus stops, and routes, and roughly 120,000 trips undertaken each day on the BRT. So this is during peak hours. This means that most urban residents do not use the BRT, although tickets are cheaper than minibus taxis. With that said, the system is not financially viable due to low usage levels. Consequently, it has to be heavily subsidized, so much so that it has been deemed a flop. The Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project. So it was introduced because certain sectors of the state and SANRAL in particular believed that one way to solve South Africa's urban transport problems was to introduce a user pay system for some major urban roads. For some argued that tolling is a way of reducing traffic volumes and encourages people to choose active commuting or use public transport. Tolling is a user-pay system whereby money is apparently collected to pay for the cost of building and maintaining the road. SANRAL opted for overhead gantries than the traditional boom-down tolling to avoid traffic congestion that would cause time delay on the roads. SANRAL claimed that the purpose of the GFIP was to upgrade and expand Gauteng's urban road network by widening the freeways, constructing new roads, improving interchanges, installing traffic management systems like cameras and automated toll systems. GFIP was opposed by road users such as Alta, who argued that the tolling is unnecessary as the fuel levy is put in place to acquire money for road maintenance. Laymen argued that tolls are also unfair as light vehicles subsidize commercial trucks and heavily used sections of the road subsidize less used sections. Motorists feel the billing system was flawed. More importantly, the type of tolls implemented did not solve the problem of public transportation. For possible solutions, fundamentally, to solve South Africa's urban transport challenges, the size and shape of South Africa's urban spaces needs to change. For example, public services, recreational facilities, and residential accommodation need to be located far close to each other. Housing policies need to deliberately address past racial and class segregation. Multi-dwellings, such as walk-ups, should be prioritized in terms of housing policies. With these measures in place, much of the fundamentals for an affordable, efficient, and financially sustainable public transportation systems and active commuting will be in place. In conclusion, South Africa's colonial and apartheid history has played a significant role in how her cities evolved. Unfortunately, the post-apartheid government has reinforced this pattern by building low-cost housing units on the outskirts and allowing informal settlements to expand there as well. This urban configuration makes transport travel costs very expensive and it makes it harder to access employment and services. Great distances also prevent active commuting, and the death of public transport in the form of buses and trains forces urban residents to rely heavily on private or semi-private motorized transport. South African cities, therefore, suffer from a lack of transport connectivity. This makes South Africa's cities and the economy as a whole highly vulnerable to fluctuations in the price of oil and is a significant hindrance to economic growth and the evolution of sustainable cities. Thank you.